I have now the pleasure to introduce Robert Dowd. He is full professor for English studies at the Universidad de León, Spain, a native of Ireland. He has taught at universities in Ireland, Germany, and Spain. He has published extensively on the application of virtual exchange and blended mobility in higher education, and has been invited to deliver plenary speeches at international conferences in the USA, Asia, and across Europe. As coordinator of 3 Erasmus Plus projects, including the European Policy Experiment, Virtual Innovation, and Support Networks for Teachers, called Valiant, he has regularly collaborated with universities and organizations on the promotion and integration of virtual exchange in higher education. His most recent books are Internationalizing Higher Education and the Role of Virtual Exchange, published in 2023, and the co-edited volume Virtual Innovation and Support Networks in 2024. He has been recognized in Stanford University's ranking on the World Top 2% Scientists from 2023 to 2025. He has taught various training programs on virtual exchange hybrid approaches to teaching and English medium instruction in universities across Spain, Italy, Lithuania, and Austria. He also works regularly as an expert evaluator of the European Commission and is a consultant in the field of language education policy and practice for the Council of Europe. Please welcome Robert. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. How are you all? Well, first of all, I should say you're very welcome to León. Yeah? Do you like it? It's lovely, isn't it? Okay. No need to applaud so far. Okay. I came here I was thinking almost, I think 25 years ago, and I still love this place, and I still go around, I walk around, and I discover it, I discover new things all the time. I mean, León is famous in Spain, I think, principally for its bars and its tapas, right, which is good for you guys, right, okay? And okay, more applause for that, yeah. But I think what I love about this place is the history it has. The alcalde, the mayor of León, who was here this morning, he mentioned that this is a Roman town. You're walking around well, it wasn't a Roman town, it was a Roman garrison, yeah? And it was founded 2,000 years ago because, as you guys are going to see, I think on Friday when you go to the Médulas, this area of Spain was famous for its gold. A lot of gold that kept the Roman Empire going came out from this area. So here, they needed a garrison. It's also famous because when most of Spain belonged to the Muslims and belonged to the Muslim Empire, Christian Spain was basically here in the Kingdom of León. Yeah? And it's also very famous for another thing that maybe you haven't heard of, but it is also what's called the cradle of parliamentarism, or of parliamentary democracy. Because this is where the first parliament, the first democratic parliament, was ever held in 1188. The English used to claim that they had it. But as an Irishman, I'm proud to tell you that no, they didn't. They didn't. The first one comes from here. And if you walk around the town, you will see Roman walls. You're going to a beautiful, magnificent place tonight called the Collegiata, I think, for a reception. That's where the kings of León lived, and you can visit their graves. Probably not tonight, but maybe if you have time off, you can go and visit their graves. There are some magnificent places in this town, so please make the most of it when you're here. Yeah? Okay, so anyway, that's my welcome bit. Yeah? This is what I'm being asked to talk to you about today, about virtual exchange, virtual mobility, blended mobility, all of these type of things. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to talk to you about, some definitions, because if you notice, there are an awful lot of different terminology being used about this. And it can get very confusing because people use different terms to refer to the same thing. So we're going to try and clear that up first, right? But then I'm going to show you the awkward bits, yeah? The challenges, the debates that are happening in European higher education about these issues. And then, if I have time, I want to propose to you a few steps that a European alliance like yours, or like ours, I should say, could undertake to promote these type of activities. Okay, we are all very aware of this wonderful 50% mobility aim that you've all been set. Yeah, and we all, raise our eyebrows when we hear it and things like that. But maybe this has a role to play in what you're, in that. We'll talk about that more. Okay. First of all, I want everybody to turn around and look at somebody that you're sitting next to, whether you know them or not. And you've got 2 minutes to discuss these two questions. What is the difference for you between virtual exchange and virtual mobility? And what do you understand by the term blended mobility? And what are BITs? Okay? Let's start with those very, very simple questions. Everybody's got 2 minutes to find a partner and talk about these things. What do you understand by these terms? Okay, all right. Time up. So, I'm going to give you guys an opportunity later on to give your opinions about things and to give me your thoughts about certain things. But in the interest of time, I'm going to suggest some solutions to this, so to speak, right? Some definitions, right? Okay, you can tell me if you agree or not. Yeah. First of all, virtual exchange, right? Virtual exchange is what we would call an umbrella term, right? It's like this big, broad term that covers lots of different things. And it's basically bringing learners into online intercultural interaction and collaboration with partners from other countries or geographical locations as an integrated part of coursework and under the guidance of educators. Right. Now, I bet you most of you would have guessed the first part. This is about bringing groups of learners into contact online in the internet and getting them to collaborate and communicate together. But I think it's really important to include these last two parts. As an integrated part of coursework means that this is integrated into our classes, into our teaching, right? And it also means that students are going to get grades or recognition in some way or part of a grade for what they do in that work. And it's under the guidance of educators, meaning teachers. Teachers are helping, they are giving the students the task to do, they are guiding them in their interactions, they are helping them to learn from the experience, right? If you don't include those last two parts, then basically anything is virtual exchange, right? Some of your students meeting some international people on Facebook, or, well, nobody uses Facebook anymore, I don't know, whatever they want to use, and chatting together, that is not virtual exchange, okay? This is an educational activity with recognition and with pedagogical principles in it, okay? That's what we mean by virtual exchange. Now, like I said, there's lots of different terms that are related to virtual exchange. Probably the most famous one is, what's the most famous one of all the ones you see here? COIL. Well done. Correct. Well done. COIL comes from John Rubin in the United States, but it's becoming more and more common now, okay? We could say that COIL is, shall we say, one form of virtual exchange, okay? It's not the only one, but it's a common one, okay? If you come from foreign language education, you might talk about collaboration. If you come from business studies and economics, they talk a lot about global virtual teams. And different countries, the DAAD in Germany, the Dutch Ministry of Education, when they give kind of initiatives, they give it a new name. All right? So that's why it can get so confusing. But basically, all of these are about, integrated and structured online collaboration between learners. Okay? Now, so far so good, I hope. Virtual exchange is not the same as virtual mobility, okay? Virtual mobility can be defined as learners enrolled as students in one higher educational institution having the opportunity to follow courses at another educational institution online, all right? So, for example, I'm the Erasmus coordinator for my department. My students would go away and study in Poland and do Erasmus, for example. During COVID, what happened? They couldn't travel. What they could do is they could join the online courses that were being offered in that Polish university. They could do the online exams at that Polish university, and they could receive the grades back from Poland when they were finished. That's an example of virtual mobility, okay? So you see the difference. Virtual exchange doesn't involve students registering or taking part at another university. They are still in their home university, taking part in their local classes, but as part of that class, they are communicating and collaborating with people in another country. Do you get the difference? Does that make sense? Hopefully it does. Okay, all right. This virtual mobility has been criticized a lot, right? Especially it was criticized because, of course, COVID happened so quickly and nobody was ready for it. Universities weren't ready for it, okay? So they didn't, shall we say, many of them did not do virtual mobility very well. They offered courses and that was it, right? Maybe some of you have come across a guy called Piet van Hove, right? He was president, or is president still, of the EI, not anymore, they used to be. He says, the huge problem is that in traditional physical student mobility, the ultimate benefits in terms of competences don't generally come from the formal curriculum. In so-called virtual mobility, there are no opportunities outside the classroom. While there are certainly good examples to the contrary, many online courses simply do not require collaboration or meaningful interaction between the students. So what he's saying here is very simple. When you go on Erasmus, you go to another country, and you attend classes, but really, where do you develop your language skills? Where do you develop your intercultural skills and your social skills and your soft skills? Not sitting in a lecture hall. You do it by going to the supermarket. I was going to say to the post office, but of course nobody goes to the post office anymore. I'm really showing my age, I think, this morning. But you know what I mean? It's like in these intercultural situations outside of the classroom, that's where the Erasmus and all of these mobility programs, that's where the value is. So if you are developing virtual mobility programs, you have to consider it is not just giving lectures. It is also finding ways for students to engage with people from the local culture, other students, and to engage with them in meaningful ways and collaborate with them in meaningful ways. And that's where virtual mobility can be improved. Yeah? Blended mobility. Well, I suppose this is maybe the easiest one, right? Basically, it is the combination of physical mobility, short-term physical mobility, combined with online collaboration, okay? And BIPs are blended intensive programs. I'm sure you've all heard of them, right? And we're going to talk a bit more about them in a while, okay? BIPs are the European Commission's, the Erasmus Plus program's kind of main blended mobility program that was just brought in the most recent program now that's coming to an end. And basically, as I'm sure all of you know, what it involves is a period of online collaboration between 3 universities, and then a short period of physical mobility between 5 and 30 days, and students have to be awarded at least 3 ECTS credits, right? So that's what BIPs look like. I'll give you an example of one. I've been doing one that I love very much for the past 4 years here in this university with colleagues in Germany and many other universities, in the Faculty of Education. And this is how we organize it. It's called Innovation in Foreign Language Teaching. So basically, we allow students to sign up who are studying master's degrees in language teaching. They're going to become basically secondary school English teachers, most of them, okay? But they come from all over Europe, as you can see. And what we do is we give them online guest lectures, and then we give them an online collaboration phase where we get them into groups to collaborate and do a project together, maybe to carry out research or to develop lesson plans or whatever. And then they come to León for 1 week, and they have to finalize their projects. We give them workshops and obviously cultural events and things like that. And this works really, really well because it takes part as part of our courses. Right? So I'm teaching a course in innovation in foreign language teaching, and as part of that course, all of this is happening. Right? It's not external to a course, and that's what I think one of the great values of it is. Yeah? Now, that's what the last one looked like. Look at all of that. Imagine looking after that for a week. But anyway, yeah. Okay. So the value of virtual exchange and blended mobility, I think, has become more and more recognized in Europe after many, many years. And I suppose COVID was the reason for that. Yeah? But, you know, in all of the studies that are coming out, this one is by the European University Association. They say that, you know, a huge majority of institutions now see the value of virtual exchange for those students that will never go abroad, because we know there's a huge number of students due to family reasons, work reasons, financial reasons, are never going to be able to go away for 6 months or 9 months and study. So for them, it is a realistic opportunity. And also, it is seen as a complement to physical mobility. It can be like seen as a motivation to bring students to want to go abroad. Yeah? In the AI barometer, you can see down here at the end, areas that need to be paid more attention. There's a growing, interest in how this should be done, and that it needs to be supported more. Right? Okay, and within the Erasmus Plus program, at the moment we have BIPs, but they also have a program called Erasmus Plus Virtual Exchanges, they call them. But you will notice the countries that they are asking us that they are offering collaboration with. So you can apply for virtual exchange projects, but with Sub-Saharan Africa, Western Balkans, Southern Mediterranean, Neighborhood East. So countries that are, shall we say, on the exterior, that are outside of Europe, right? And lots of people are questioning, why is that? What is the reasoning behind that? But anyway, it's maybe something for another day. Yeah. Okay, now we've worked out what virtual exchange is and what blended mobility is. Let's talk about a few of the critiques, the criticisms, what people are, the debates that are going on around it, right? The first one is that there is a fear among certain groups that by promoting virtual exchange, that the European Union and that universities will take away funding from long-term mobility. Okay, there's a general fear about that. And there's a very interesting policy paper that you can find online by the European Students' Union Network and the Erasmus Student Network, right? And have a look at what they say. I'll let you read these two extracts from it here. Well, the first point I think is fair enough, that virtual mobility is a bit of an oxymoron, isn't it? How can you be mobile virtually? So maybe in Star Trek they were able to do things like that, but in real life, no, right? So whether we should call it mobility at all is one question. But also they are worried that universities will somehow say, okay, we've got hundreds or thousands of students doing virtual exchanges, then we don't need to invest money in long-term physical mobility. All right, that's their argument. Okay, but let's be realistic about things, right? We used to talk about by 2020 having 20% of European students mobile. Okay, by 2020, 20%. Now they're talking about by 2030, 25%. Okay, the alliances are expected to achieve 50%. Right? This is the reality. This is the most recent data that I could find. Okay? There's the 2020 target. How many countries have achieved it? 1, 2, 3, 4. One of them is Luxembourg. Right? And I imagine the others, to be honest, I'm not able to make up which ones they are now, but I imagine they're pretty small countries as well. All right? The average, 8.4%. Okay? So there's an issue here now. All right? It's very nice to say 50%, we aimed for 50%, we aimed for 25%, but if this is the reality, then we have to start thinking a little bit about the students that are not going to go abroad. Okay? What are we going to do? Do they not deserve a chance to develop the intercultural skills, the soft skills that come with international learning? Okay? And if they do, then we need to find other ways of giving them those experiences. Right? And there's another thing. This is a fascinating book. Maybe it's a few years old now, but still it's really worth reading. It's called Cosmopolitan Learning for a Global Era by Sarah Richardson. And she spends an awful lot of that book pointing out that physical mobility, even though that seems to be the holy grail of Erasmus Plus and the holy grail for many of our universities and for alliances, she goes, physical mobility programs, study abroad programs can actually be very exclusive, right? She says mobility tends to be socially exclusive, providing opportunities to elite students to enhance their distinctiveness from other students, but remaining inaccessible to many. So basically, in mobility programs, who goes abroad? The better off, the better educated. Yeah? Who doesn't go abroad? Okay? And this makes the gaps bigger. Okay, so she calls, for us to look at other ways. I mean, obviously that's where the whole internationalization at home programs come from, right? Well, first of all, to answer the European Students' Union and the European Students' Network, I don't think there's anybody that is doing virtual exchange or that is studying and promoting virtual exchange that is trying to say that we are in competition with physical mobility. That is not the case. First of all, virtual mobilities or virtual exchange is not recognized. As far as I know, and you guys can correct me, but you are not allowed to count virtual exchanges towards your 50% goal. Okay? Maybe you can correct me on that, but as far as I know, that is the case. You do? Okay, right. You design your own definition. That's handy, isn't it? That's useful. Good, good. Okay, anyway. Look, proponents of virtual exchange do not aim to compete with or replace physical mobility, right? Virtual exchange is designed to be part of physical mobility programs, like in blended intensive programs. It is for the students that will never go abroad on long-term mobility. And it is also used more and more to prepare students for going abroad. I don't know about what happens in your universities, but I remember when I went to, okay, 100 years ago now, when I went on Erasmus, okay? But I remember my preparation for going to Grenoble in France in 1990, never mind. My preparation was literally a phone call from the station, and he goes, "You are staying at Résidence Berlioz. Bonne chance." Anyhow, that was it. That was it, basically. That was it. That was my preparation for going to Grenoble. Okay? In the end, I had a lovely time and all of that, but still, right? So what people are doing more and more now, or what universities are doing now, are looking for ways to use virtual exchange to prepare students for these initial programs, right? A couple of examples from Tübingen, a beautiful city in Germany. They have a wonderful program called TÜBIP, which prepares, if you are going to come to Tübingen on a mobility program, they get you to join this program beforehand. They match you with a local student. Well, I'm sure you all match students with local students, but before they come as well, right? And they also give them online classes and little online lectures about culture and language and things like that. Okay? In our own university, a PhD student of mine, she came up with a brilliant program called Gear Up, which is all about a specific training program for students that were going to be going abroad, specific exchange tasks that they had to do to prepare for living and studying abroad by interacting with international partners. So there's lots of ways you could do this. And there's no reason why in an alliance you could not consider something like that, right? Where you have, before students go to one of our universities from the other one, that they take part in this online program. Okay, that might be something to consider. Okay. Now, blended mobility. Do you all have BIPs in your universities? BIPs? Yeah, are they popular? My experience and from what I hear, I was talking to a guy from the European Commission one day about this, and they're worried that they are becoming too popular. Yeah? And there was a very interesting article by a colleague from Portugal. This was in LinkedIn. You'll find it in LinkedIn if you search for it. And she says this: BIPs cost less, they are easier to organize, and project an image of political success. But this statistical engineering comes at a real cost. We are trading quality for quantity. Students have less time to adapt, experience another culture, or build lasting networks. The educational and human impact is vastly diminished. So what she's saying is that academic tourism, right? BIPs, because they only involve normally 1 week of actual physical mobility, that it's too superficial. That in 1 week your students are not going to get, obviously, the same experience as they're going to get from living in Grenoble for 9 months, okay? But I go against this. I'm sorry, but I go against this. Because, first of all, you have an online stage. And the problem is, I think, that the online stage of these BIPs is not being done properly. Because teachers are not trained how to organize online collaborative learning, right? If you train your teachers to do online collaborative learning properly, they will know how to exploit the 6 to 8 weeks that online learning can have. The online learning stage of a BIP is not meant to be lectures, okay? It's meant to be students collaborating together around tasks, right? So if we can teach them how to do that, then there you are having an intercultural experience. And also, like I mentioned earlier, in BIPs, the great thing is that they are taking part normally as part of classes. Okay, so your teacher is talking to you about course content. He's referring, or he or she is referring to what is happening in the BIP, and they're related together. Students are sent on Erasmus for their 9 months, and they're on their own. And I think we all know that nowadays, because students travel with their mobile phones and their laptops, it's very easy for them to lock themselves away in their residences, not leave their room, and talk to their girlfriends and their mothers and their fathers for those 9 months, right? And not have any real educational experiences. In BIPs, because they are structured and because they are part of courses, students are forced to engage with their partners, okay, if they are done properly, okay? But still, this is, I think, an interesting point, right? Other criticisms of BIPs. My friend Christina from the international office, by the way, if you ever want to organize a BIP, you need to make friends with somebody in your international office, okay? So Chris, I have a bottle of wine for you here later, okay? Good guy. What they tell me in the international offices, and I can see it, is that they are almost the same amount of administrative work for 1 week mobility as it is for 1 year's mobility. Am I right? You're nodding your head, right? And this has to be changed. This is something that Erasmus Plus and the Commission has to solve. Another structural problem that I have found with them from my students is that, so in a BIP, you have all of these international students collaborating together, but in the end, they all come to León, okay, in my case, right? But so my students tell me at the end always, we really enjoyed it, right? But, well, have a read. This is what one of my students told me, right? Can you read that okay? So almost by definition, by the way they are structured, BIPs means that one set of students are not going to be mobile. And they complain about this. They say, okay, we get to meet these people and stuff like that, but it's not the same as the others who get to travel abroad for a week. I'm not too sure what the solution to this is. Okay, again, maybe this is something we can talk about later. But I think this is also a structural issue with BIPs. Yeah? Okay, the Civis, another university alliance, they have done an awful lot of work with blended intensive programs. And they brought out online recently a report about their BIPs experiences. And they pointed out lots of weaknesses as well. I'm kind of focusing on the weaknesses. Maybe I shouldn't be. Okay, the volume of paperwork, right, what we mentioned already. The teaching effort is not formally recognized within institutional workload models. Teachers do an awful lot of extra work to organize BIPs. How can that be recognized? In many cases, it isn't, okay? And then, roughly 1 in 3 students reporting that they could not recognize their ECTS credits. So when all of those students come to León after having completed their BIP, Christina and her colleagues give them beautiful certificates saying 3 ECTS. They go back to universities. We're not sure if the universities actually recognize those 3 ECTS as part of their studies. They should, obviously. The Erasmus Plus program would want you to, but whether it happens or not, you guys, again, can tell me later in your cases. Okay? So, I mean, this is not a perfect system, a perfect model of learning, but it certainly is, I think, very interesting. Okay? Now, so we said that physical mobility can be exclusive in many ways. But virtual exchange, one of the big arguments about virtual exchange is that it is more inclusive, that anybody can take part, so to speak, right? And the Stevens Initiative, which is this American organization that promotes virtual exchange, has brought out lots of examples and data to show that students that normally wouldn't go abroad are taking part in virtual exchanges, which is lovely, which is great, which is nice to know. Okay, but it is also a form of learning that might not be suited to all of our learners, okay? The first thing is, virtual exchange is based on the premise of collaboration and intercultural exchange. However, we all know that we have a lot of students that are used to coming to class, sitting down, taking their notes, going away and preparing their exams. And that's what they want their education to be. So if you are that type of student, being put into a virtual exchange can kind of go against maybe what you want from your university, and you can complain about that. And then there is also this question of foreign language proficiency. These exchanges happen 90% of the time in English, right? And sometimes there are bilingual models between maybe French and English, or Spanish and English, and things like that. But 90% of them nowadays, and if we were to do them in the Alliance, they will probably happen through English. Think about it. In your home universities, how many students are prepared and ready to communicate and work in international groups, in Zoom meetings, in English? Right? I have come across that with my own students. Right? I'm an English teacher here. That's basically my job. Right? So, look what one student told me once. Again, take a minute to read what my student told me. Poor girl, no? I call this the danger of being thrown in the deep end. You know, if you want to teach a child to swim, you bring it to the swimming pool, you go to the deep end, and you throw it in. Let's see what happens. They'll probably swim, right? We kind of do that with virtual exchanges. We put students into Zoom rooms, asking them to collaborate about the subjects that they're studying with people that they don't know at all, from different languages, different cultural backgrounds, different accents, and we're hoping that they are going to learn from this and they're going to enjoy it. And I can tell you from all the hundreds of portfolios and essays I've read over the years, they do, 90%. But we do have this issue here too, okay? So, if you're going to get your teachers to do these type of exchanges, they need to support their students. Remember I said in the beginning, under the guidance of educators. That means that you give your students preparation in what they're going to talk about. Help them with the vocabulary they'll need. Maybe introduce text-based communication as well as Zoom, so students can write emails or take part in discussion forums and things like that, which is, gives them a chance to prepare what they're going to be talking about. Okay? So, that's it. Okay, I'm throwing all the bad stuff at you. You're going to think this is a really bad idea by the time I'm finished. Okay, and the final debate or issue that has come up, okay, and this is relatively new, okay, which is the topic of engaging with students in conflict zones. All right, now you can guess who I'm talking about here, all right? All right, there are lots of examples of exchanges happening between classes maybe in Europe with Palestine, Israel, Ukraine, okay? There are lots of those happening, especially with Ukraine. There's so much emphasis now on trying to include Ukraine and Ukrainian students and Ukrainian universities in Erasmus and in the whole European higher education system. There's a lot of projects involving them, okay? And these have value, okay? They are very good for both groups. I did a study recently where I interviewed 20 different teachers that do virtual exchanges, and those 20 teachers are based in the Middle East, in Ukraine, in Afghanistan, and different places like that. And I asked them, what is the value for you? Okay? Well, they said it was a way of escaping what is going on outside the classroom. Our students can learn about the conflict, okay? Connections through the exchange will allow these people's voices to be heard, okay? It gives the students in the Ukraine, for example, a chance to tell the world what is happening to them, how they are feeling and stuff like that. And that's also very informative and useful, I think, for our students, okay? There again, I'll let you see what some of the teachers told us. Okay. Okay, so now, they're the value, but I'm sure you're already thinking about the problems and the challenges that this might involve as well. All right, let's have a look what they told me. Okay, the challenges. Okay, first of all, the logistics. I'm doing one of my students' virtual exchanges is that we work with students in Germany, in Slovenia, and Ukraine. And you can imagine the type of things that are happening, okay? If there's an error alert, we have to go to the shelter. Students from foreign countries should be ready for this. At 7 a.m. they are bombed, and at 8:30 they go to their lectures. This is extremely challenging. This is the day-to-day lives of these students, right? Politics. Who are we allowed to talk to? Who do we want our students to talk to? Who do our students want to talk to? And who do they not want them to talk to? This is a minefield, excuse the pun, right? This is an English teacher told me this. She said, a teacher in England, in the UK. Some of my colleagues in English made an official complaint to the head of department because we engaged with a project involving, and I won't say which one, a country in the Middle East, but you can probably guess. Our institution does not have an official position on engagement with that country, but I think you should know that it happened. So, who are we allowed to talk to? And are students willing to engage in these type of projects with them? Okay, and finally, the risk of trauma. You are dealing with students in, let's stick with the Ukraine, that are seeing and experiencing terrible things every day. They are telling that to our students in their classes. And the teachers in the Ukraine have said they are worried that, our students in León or wherever could be traumatized. What I'm afraid of is that our students can traumatize those students in Spain or wherever, because they are not supposed to be in this difficult situation. So they become like a witness of something horrible and very close, and sometimes they don't know how to react. And that might be a problem. Okay? So these are the type of things we are dealing with. All right? So we've about 10 minutes left. I'm going to leave you guys with a few questions. Again, I'm going to allow you now to chat about these things maybe with your partners. And for the last 2 or 3 minutes then, I'll ask maybe if some of you would like to give your thoughts on it, okay? So are teachers in your institutions aware of virtual exchange to begin with, do you think? Do they know about it? Is there an interest in it? Do you feel that BIPs have taken away from long-term mobility programs? Okay. Are they a risk of academic tourism, like we discussed? And how do you feel about promoting virtual exchange initiatives with universities in zones of conflict? What risks do you see? Would you be comfortable with that? Do you think it's important we do it? Okay? So I'm going to give you guys we've got about 15 minutes left, or less, no? 10 minutes left. So we're going to let everybody talk with their partners for about 5 minutes, and in 5 minutes we'll come back together. Okay, off you go. So we have 2 colleagues here with microphones. I'd love to hear your thoughts either about these questions or your observations, your thoughts, your ideas about anything that I brought up today. Please, opinion. This gentleman here in the front, please.
Okay, I discussed with Bernard about the point that these 9 universities forming EURECA-PRO know each other now since around 5 to 7 years. We trust each other, we have comparable cohorts of students, we have comparable university systems. In addition, we have all the tools and technology in place that we could connect our students and our study programs and our way of teaching through these topics which you have shown to us and which you have presented here. But still, I agreed with Bernard and Bernard agreed with me that few students from Hasselt University know about Leoben, and it's the same that few students from Leoben know about Hasselt University. And at the end of the discussion, Bernard said from his experience as a teacher, and I hand over now my microphone to him, that he explains what our conclusion or what our discussion was.
Yeah, I might say something wrong for my university, but I think that we hardly have any virtual exchanges as you explained it.
You don't have?
No, we hardly have. Maybe we don't have, but I'm not 100% sure. But so having really these exchanges with students from these different universities. And then I was wondering, well, before I was rector, I was a professor in environmental law. I had my course of environmental law, let's say 10 lectures, etc. And you give that to your own students. The question then is, why would I, as a professor in environmental law, have or organize my course as a virtual exchange? If nobody tells me to do it, I have to teach it to my own students, teaching that in a physical way, yeah, teaching that, or in person, teaching that virtually with students with the different difficulties you mentioned. Yeah, it is a completely different course. So how do we convince professors to integrate these virtual exchanges? And yeah, again, it becomes a different course, so it would not be my classical environmental law course, it would be a different one.
Okay.
We're talking about additional efforts, about changing something, and why would a person be motivated to do this?
Good, okay, very good point. Okay, can I respond to that before we go on to another question? There are numerous reasons why we should be doing this for our students, but also for ourselves as teachers. Our students, we are always saying that our students need to develop soft skills. We are always saying our students need to develop intercultural skills. We are always saying our students need to develop foreign language skills. In your environmental science and environmental law class, I doubt very much you are focusing on those. Yet, your students are going to need to work in a globalized world where they need to develop these skills as well. How do you do that? In your content of your day-to-day lectures, you're probably not focusing on those things. The virtual exchange does not take over your whole course. The virtual exchange is one evaluated, shall we say, task or assignment of your course. Okay? So that's the first thing to keep in mind. Secondly, the advantages for teachers. We've interviewed a lot of teachers that have done this for the first time, and they do the virtual exchanges for the first time. First of all, they say that it's a first step into an international academic world. There are many, all of you today are active members of your alliance, that's wonderful. But our universities are full of teachers that do not have international academic networks. This is a first step into those networks. They get to know a teacher in another country, they learn how that teacher works, they get to meet them and maybe present their project at a conference. It leads to greater collaboration and it opens up international collaboration for teachers. It also, by the way, is a very good intercultural learning exercise for us as teachers. Every week I'm online trying to find out how to collaborate with a teacher in Ukraine, what that means, how do I adapt my class to that, how do I understand her local context, things like that. So it develops our intercultural skills as well as teachers. There are many, many different reasons for doing it. But of course, like you said, we have to convince our teachers to do that, right? But it can be done. The evidence is there. The results are there. Obviously, in my time today, I couldn't show you more, right? But there's much evidence that this benefits students and it benefits teachers. So really, I think we would need to sell it to them. Okay. Another thing, I think you mentioned you didn't know, or one of you mentioned you didn't know how many virtual exchanges are happening. Universities don't know how many virtual exchanges are happening. Why? Because the international office has no idea what I am doing in my class. Okay? If they're doing a BIP, they do know, right? Because there's an administrative side. But I do 3-4 virtual exchanges every year with my students in different classes. The university doesn't, no offense, they don't care. Okay? They should. And there should be one of the steps in the workshop we're going to do after the break for those of you that are here. There's different steps that universities should be taking in order to support and promote these type of activities. And one of them is the international offices need to start finding out who is doing virtual exchange and identify these people as champions and get them to come to workshops and tell the other people that are not doing it the value of it. Okay? But that means you need to, like I said, not centralize, but at least have a closer connection between these type of activities that are happening in classes and what's happening in your international offices and what they know. Right? Now, Christina will hate me because she says we already have enough work, why are you doing this to us? But you know what I mean. Somebody needs to be aware of what is happening in the classrooms in international learning. Other comments and questions?
I think his answer, indeed, I wanted to answer to Bernard's question as well. And as I said, it's not for, it's for each program. You don't have to do that in every courses, as he said, but in some courses, because now all program you should have specific competencies, and you should to find the right courses to introduce those competencies exactly as you said. I wanted to react to the risk of academic tourism. Indeed, previously it was not the BIP that was involved, but the classical physical mobility that was criticized as well for this risk of academic tourism. I think it's a false problematic anyway. It's necessary for to gain intercultural competencies, indeed. So it's not really a risk in my opinion, and indeed it's really complementary to the physical mobility, all the BIPs. So it should seen that way, as you suggest.
Great. Good. Thank you. So we're in agreement. Good. Okay.
First of all, thank you so much, Robert, for coming this morning and sharing this with us. I think it's very important that everyone who's part of the Alliance was able to hear a little bit more about virtual mobility and virtual exchange and the differences between those two, and also blended mobility as well. As you, of course, mentioned the infamous 50% goal that we all know about very well in this Alliance. I think it's a strategic move to start talking about ways that virtual exchange can play a role in this, as virtual mobility is recognized by the Commission for our alliances. So this is something that we definitely need to think about moving forward. And I appreciate you being able to explain this process to us, and also talking about how we can get professors involved and motivated about integrating this into their classrooms, because they're really the champions of this, and they're the ones that can really engage students. And so it is about working together between IRO offices with professors as well, see how we can get more professors involved and hopefully take this to the next level. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
First of all, thank you so much for the presentation and for organizing this whole week review. I want to give my opinion as a student, so PhD student. First of all, I have a very interesting background, because for my master's, I come from an international master's where we were all students from different continents, different countries, and I can confirm that you learn so much about other cultures, and the interpersonal skills that I've gained throughout my education is insane. I also, during my PhD, I have the chance with working with the professors that push us a lot to collaborate internationally. So this is definitely a plus. And also to answer the last questions about promoting virtual exchange initiatives with universities in zones of conflict. As I'm Lebanese and I come from a very politically complicated country, I can confirm that students there, they thrive a lot and they starve for such opportunities. And I think it's an exchange. You would learn a lot, and we would break so much stereotypes if we were able to even like break down these barriers and give more opportunities to students who rely on education to be able to, how to say, like to build themselves and etc. So thank you again, and that's all.
Thank you very much. I'm glad that you see a value for this in countries and zones of conflict. I mean, it's a very important role, I think, that we play with this.
Yes, okay. I am Jorge García Arias from the University of León. Firstly, thank you very much for your insightful presentation, Professor Dowd. It's amazing. I am a professor of development studies, you know, international development and so on. And I was wondering about the challenges or difficulties of this virtual exchange in a context of the global south. Of course, I am thinking about the technical and linguistic challenges that you have been talking about, you know, the use of laptops or stable internet connection or the proficiency in language and so on and so forth. But above all, I am worried about cultural issues of or difficulties when we are thinking in a virtual exchange between both teachers and professors in the global north and the global south. You know, the distribution, or to better say, the redistribution of power, patronism, and or what my colleagues in Latin America has come to call the coloniality of knowledge. Of course, this sort of difficulties may also arise in real, let's say, non-virtual exchange, but you know, you have more time to deal with this sort of misunderstanding when they arise, and to go through the problems and discuss it. And I was wondering if, in your experience, these challenges or difficulties really emerge when we are trying to use virtual exchange in global north, global south experiences. And of course, I would really appreciate if you may share with us some thoughts about how can we probably not solve because we are in a colonial moment, but how to manage these issues that may arise. And thank you very much, Professor Dowd. Thank you.
I think it's an excellent question. This idea of the difference between engaging or organizing projects between the global north and the global south, and the dangers, the extra dangers or challenges that involves. And that is very true, and there's, believe it or not, there's a lot of research being done about this as well. The issue here is what we call equity of exchange. So it is very careful, you have to be very careful when you organize projects like this between the global north and the global south, that we do not position the students in the north as coming to save the students in the south. And I'm afraid if you look at a lot of projects that are happening, that happens a lot. American students working with Palestinian students to solve problems in Palestine, for example, right? Questions like this, okay? Or, you know, I mean, there are many examples of this. Or, I mean, apart from the basic technological problems, what we're talking about is how you design the project. What are they asked to do? And you have to make sure that both sets of students get to contribute something equally to the other, to help solve each other's problems, as opposed to just solving the problems of the global south. Okay? But this, I think, is a common problem with any type of project involving the global south. There's a lot of problem with these capacity building projects that Erasmus Plus has. And you are right, it is very important to consider that when designing those projects. And I could show you lots of nice things that have been written about it, about how to solve that problem. I cannot show it to you right now, now is not the time, but I'd be happy to share that with you. Okay, it's a very fair point. Thank you. Okay, I think it's break time now. If any of you are not sick of listening to me and talking about this already, when we come back, we will have a very practical session where I'm going to try to show you some ideas about how we can promote virtual exchange and blended mobility in your universities and in your alliance. And I'm going to ask you to reflect on that a little bit, about what you're doing already and what you could do in the future. Okay, thank you very much for listening.
I don't know if it's working. Yeah, so we want to thank you, Robert, from the University and Alliance. I mean, this is very timely for now at the EURECA-PRO. I think it was super interesting for all of us now, at this moment, at this time, at this place that we are now. Robert has been there from the beginning. I mean, we tested the Europe tool in the review week at Libice, the first phase, and Robert was part of it. And we have developed big programs. In 2022, one of the PhD meetings was to a big program here that is still alive. I mean, people are still joining. So this part of alliances have been already within EURECA-PRO for a long time, from phase 1. And we want to thank Robert, and I think it's such an asset for the Alliance to have this in-house. And we really thank you for today. And please, the ones who are staying later at the workshop, then you can pass the information to your managers at the university there. Yeah. Thank you, Robert. And we want to give you a little present from there. Yes.